let's talk about the topic, why so many Russians hate the West. Of course, I have to make the spoilers, like it's a generalization and obviously not all of the Russians hate the West, and even those who feel kind of negatively about the West, not really hate, because hate is probably too strong of a word. Definitely there are some people who are genuinely, fanatically hateful, but mostly it's kind of negative attitude toward the West. And I would say that in general there is it's kind of true that I don't know if most of Russians, but very big part of Russians having this negativism toward the Western culture. At least, well, that's what they hear from the TV every day, all of the demonization of the West. It's no surprise they feel this way. Also, historically, during the Cold War times, the West was a big capitalistic enemy of Soviet Union, so there is a historical heritage to this as well. So, saying all of these spoilers, let's go to the points that I consider might play a major role and contribute important part in all of these negative attitudes. And the main point from my point of view, which can be of course wrong, in the comment you can tell about your ideas and opinions, but from my point of view, the main thing why a lot of Russians feel bad and feel negative toward the West is so-called the wrong values. What do I mean by this? It's all of this LGBTQ and a lot of other letters narrative that in the West, especially in Europe, as you know, we are very tolerant towards this, we are inclusive and try to promote equality, things like that. Most of Russians, I would say, even a lot of my friends, they feel at the very least kind of uneasy about these topics, and in the worst cases they actively hate everything related to gays, trans, and things like that. Unfortunately, it's absolutely not well accepted. These people and their rights to be respected equally as other heteronormative people. So here's a really big cultural and values differences. Russians don't want to accept them as their equals. They want to demonize these people, and they want to portray them as sick, but not even sick in the sense like no one hates a person who has a big sickness. Sick like in the disrespectful way. I personally absolutely hate that about current Russian mentality, but we have what we have. Another thing, well, about abortions, you might think that Russia is also like super against this, because that's what would you expect. If they hate LGBTQ things, they also hate abortions, but here, not exactly. Because I would say that in USA, much bigger portion of population really anti-abortions. In Russia, it's despite of the efforts, ongoing efforts of the government to kind of start restricting it more and more, it's not very well received. It's a lot of backlashes, and in general, it's accessible from Social Security, and not very like people don't judge you very much for having an abortion. So it's relatively normal thing. I absolutely don't perceive that in Russia women who decide to stop their pregnancy are demonized, maybe by some part of population, but in general, that is all right. Why? Well, because historically, again, Soviet Union was, if I'm not mistaken, I think I have checked this information when I learned about this, that Soviet Union was the first country who allowed abortions just by the desire of a woman, without any kind of justification. Then for a while, Soviet Union cancelled it. I think it was after the World War, things like for a few years, but then again it was allowed and accessible for everyone. So this is, in USA, I would say it's worse right now than in Russia, curiously. And another wrong value are feminism, is feministic narrative and independent women. In Russian culture, of course not by all people, but by most people, they really hate the idea of strong, independent woman who is earning same or more than her partner. They prefer to to see women like beautiful, weak, necessarily earning less than her man, because if not, he will not feel man enough, and all of the bullshit like that. So yeah, here are the main value differences between us. That's why, obviously, Russian people who share this mentality, they feel negatively, strongly negatively towards the West. Another point why a lot of Russians hate the West is ironically because a lot of them believe that the Westerners hate Russians. And to be fair, maybe they partially are right, because it's true that right now a lot of Westerners hate Russia, but even before the war, there's still belief in Russia that the West hates Russia. The West wants to take over Russian resources, which again, partially, it might be reasonable. And also, to be fair, Hollywood and movies are not helping here, because often in so many popular, famous movies, the Russians are portrayed like bandits, like evil, stupid, who just drink vodka and things like that. So they only use the negative stereotypes about Russian and making it popular. How do you think Russians would feel about this? Well, not amazingly. Obviously, these kind of things are not promoting the good attitudes between the countries and the kindness from Russians towards the Western people. Another thing is that Russians believe that the West is all about money. And well, in general, Western capitalism, the capitalistic system, is also a cause of hate from a lot of Russians. Because, well, you know, historically, Russia was a Soviet Union for 70 years, and we've been in a socialistic system and going, hopefully, to communism. That never happened. And despite right now, modern Russia has nothing to do with communism, with Marxism philosophy or economic structure, absolutely nothing to do, except some elements like big control of government of certain assets, but that's it. It's very oligarchic country. Still, there is this thing in Russian mentality to hate the capitalism and to hate when people put so much value into the money, into becoming rich. It's somehow seen a little bit shameful. If you want to become richer than your friends than your neighbors. It's not something in Russian mentality to see as something to be proud of. It's indeed quite a shameful thing to want so much. So here's the difference, and I think it plays important role in why Russians don't like the West, despite, again, that's very curious, because modern Russia is the capitalism in its worst, probably, version, where government control what they want, but they possess, the oligarch possess the most sweet things of the property and resources in Russia. And of course, I cannot avoid mentioning that a lot of Russians believe that West and specifically Western politicians are very hypocritical and that they use double standards. You can argue about each case if it's really double standards or not, but I can give you a couple of examples. So judge yourself. For example, Iraq war in 2003 versus Russians' actions in Ukraine. Like, as you know, the US invaded Iraq based on the false claims that they have weapon of mass destruction. I think it was about chemical weapons. Never was found there. And it led to a lot of civilian casualties. At the same time, Russian actions in Ukraine, of course, seen in a different light, and Russia is accused of all kind of crimes. So the problem here is not about that Russia did a good thing, it's about the double standards again. Then Kosovo independence in 1999 and the Crimea independence in 2014. NATO bombed Serbia and supported Kosovo independence. That it was a special case, according to them. But of course, when Russia annexed Crimea with referendum, that was totally blamed case. And another case is when US supports military coups and they blame Russia for interfering into the elections. For example, it's quite proven case that the US has backed coups in Chile and in Ukraine in 2014 directly, and some other countries justifying it that they were promoting democracy. But when Russia was doing even less direct interference, if any, like I don't know, West reacted as that was the worst thing possible to do. So definitely there is some double standards, and it clearly not helping for Russians to feel good toward the West. And the last thing that I will mention is perceived Western arrogance. And probably this topic concerns more United States, but not as much Europe. In Russia, I think people really, and I remember from the times that I've been living in Russia and discussions about the West, about United States, we really believed and seen United States and its citizens as the kind of entitled pricks, you might say. People in Russia see them as arrogant. They believe that a lot of Americans, they don't know about outside world much, that they don't know a lot of geography, sciences, and that they believe that America is the greatest country in the world and others are way, way worse and less cool, let's say. So a lot of Russians see the Americans as a kind of a mixture of being not very well educated and at the same time super arrogant about their country, which is not creating very positive sentiments towards these people. I'm sure it's not true for a big part of American population, but for some part, I think it might be quite fair, because as far as I know, the public schools and public education in United States, the free one, is not of an amazing quality. If you compare it with the free education in Europe and in Russia, at least in my times, we had really good free education in public schools. The amount of knowledges and the amount of skills that you could get from it if you studied hard is brutal. Even I compare this with some of the European schools, or right now like with Spanish schools, and I see, damn, the kids here in Spain often don't know basic stuffs that I studied like in much younger ages in Russian schools. I think it's starting to decline in Russia little by little right now, but in general, it's the education still pretty decent. It's kind of heritage from Soviet Union. And the United States, from what I understand, and I might be wrong, that really great education is for money. So that's why sometimes we can see the results of arrogance mixed with being uneducated, and that's not a good look. And as a conclusion, I just want to say that I really hope that our countries, Russia and USA and also Europe, that we one day will get over these huge differences, and the difference that we still have won't prevent us from having really good relationship with each other, and stop having this hate towards each other, especially hate between average folks, between normal people. It's absolutely not worth it. I am all for being open-minded, for respecting different opinions and different lifestyles, and not trying to impose your values, your lifestyle on someone else, and try to be sensitive and respectful when we talk about it. It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not even easy for me. I'm sure it's not easy for other people, but the one can hope, right? For a better future, for a better relationship, and for better emotions between us.